What motivates you?
Eamon, what motivates you?
What motivates you, Dan?
Eamon, I asked you, what motivates you?
Well, look, we'll get into that, okay? But today, we're talking about what motivates you.
Yeah.
On the MetaMinds podcast, where we're all about relentless self-development.
And consciousness optimization.
If you haven't picked that up already.
Yes.
Get on it, guys. Okay. But yeah, so why are we talking about what motivates you, Dan?
It's very important, I think, to recognize what is actually motivating you to do certain things. It's good to reflect on this and be aware of what factors are motivating you or what aspects of motivation, because there are different aspects of motivation which we'll get into. But it's good to be aware of what actually is motivating you, what factors are motivating you to do certain things in different aspects of your life, because it probably won't be the same in everything. It could be, but there will definitely be a bit of overlap and a bit of change between different parts of your life. And
often what you think motivates you is only the surface level of what you're telling yourself or what your ego is saying motivates you. Mm-hmm. And the underlying things that motivate you are actually what's really important, because understanding and recognizing those things can lead you to healthier and more effective habits, basically.
Yeah.
Because if you realize that you're actually motivated, by money because of some deep traumatic experience that happened when you were little, then all of a sudden you can take a step back and reevaluate where you are. Mm-hmm. We've gotten too meta already, but that's why we're talking about it today. And this is why it's really important that often we lead just such busy lives that we can't take a step back and realize why am I taking this action right now?
Yeah.
Like, why actually am I taking this action right now?
Yeah.
Because when you get to the bottom of it, you're like, right, didn't see that. Yeah. It's not what I thought. Not what I thought I was doing.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess it's the idea that we can just go through the motions and not have any idea what is motivating us. So the idea of work, like you said, financially, it could be money, but then there's the biological aspect, whether that's like your body clock or your psychological urge telling you that you need to be with a partner or have a kid or do something that's like biologically driven, maybe. That could be something that's like intrinsic or like something that's within you that you may not reflect on or recognize. It's just an urge. Then we've also got written down like social, work, and psychological. So there's so many different aspects of our lives that probably would have different meanings to us and different default reactions from us. So it's just good to recognize exactly what it is, like breaking it down and going, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So why don't we look at some examples of motivating factors, shall we?
We shall. So there's a few different like overlapping ones from what we've seen in the research. So we kind of just broke it down to ones that really made the most sense and the ones that were overlapping the most with other research. So should we just go through one at a time, or should I just read them out and then we'll dive into them?
Yeah, I think one at a time. Yeah, let's jump in. So there is about 6 or 7, and yeah, as we mentioned, like these, some of them can be general, some of them are like quite obviously like huge motivating factors for people underlying, and I'm sure there's a lot that we'll miss out on, but yeah, these are some of the most important ones that we've found that motivate people.
Yep,
underlying. So,
definitely. So the first one is rewards or incentives.
So pretty obvious, basically.
Yeah.
So like, why do you do anything? It's like, well, you could be getting a reward from it, whether it's you're taking a drug to get a particular reward from it, or which is obviously an internal reward, but then like an external reward could be like helping out a homeless person, buying them a meal. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously rewarding to you because it makes you feel good that you've given back.
Yep.
And it's also rewarding to the other person, basically. Mm. But then again, if you ask why you're actually doing that, like it could actually be, you're rewarding yourself for giving a meal away to a homeless person. But yeah, the reward is actually that you think that you're a good person, you know what I mean? Which isn't a bad thing. But again, it's just like, why you actually
and recognizing
doing the things.
Yeah. And I guess also in terms of incentives as well, it made me think immediately of workplaces, how they'll try to give you incentives to stay with the company. So they'll give you bonuses, they may give you a car or a fuel allowance, or other, they could give you like dental, or they could give you a health service that's covered through the work. So that's an incentive that they recognize that we as human beings and our psychological needs, rewards and incentives are so big. They're a big driving force for what motivates us. So if the company can kind of hold on to you and go, oh, well, we'll give you a reward every year, then you might stay with them, right?
Yeah.
But it's recognizing that. Again, it's recognizing that this company's trying to do this, but if you're not happy in the work, then you need to reassess. Obviously, that's a big thing to dive into. But yeah, I guess it's just the idea that some people or some entities, businesses, whatever it may be, would have vested interest, again, which we've spoken about in another podcast about primal psychology, but the idea that they can grip onto the idea that we want rewards and incentives. So yeah, that can be a big driving force.
To take a step back from that, why do you work at all? Because the reward you're getting is money. More often than not, hey, I'll trade you my time, and in reward, you give me some money. And it's like a value trade, you know? But yeah, and that's obviously the incentive that you're doing that for. But then moving on to the next point, the opposite of that, you haven't spaced it out very much.
Sorry, mate. There's not enough space on the paper. That's what I was saying with the second one.
Fear of consequences, you know? So you could actually be working because you're afraid to die, you know? And that sounds stupid because it is, right? But it's true, you know? It's like, well, you need money to actually purchase food to stay alive unless you live, you know, out on a farm somewhere where you just grow bananas and eat bananas all day, basically.
That'd be good.
That would be great.
Yeah.
But then the fear of consequence could be like overloaded potassium.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, we're getting off topic here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fear of consequence basically is like, I need to work to survive, basically. And it could be other things in that it's like, oh, you actually have a family that you need to provide for. So that's another fear of a consequence. So instead of like pushing for the best job that you can get or going to school and working on a less amount of money until you can get a better job or a job that you're going to enjoy more, you fear the consequences of not having enough money now. So you're going to take a job that is perhaps worse on your mental health, your physical health. You don't enjoy it as much, all these different factors, because you're afraid to not have enough money right now, which again is another huge topic, which is a huge issue in society currently, where not enough people have enough money, basically. And, you know, if the system was changed around just a tiny bit, it would be much more fair for a lot of people that are struggling.
Yes.
But yeah, what are other examples of doing something out of a fear of
a
failing?
consequence? Well, I guess you've covered a lot of them there. See, I mentioned it before, but I think there's also a counter to that where a consequence could be, you know, for me, for example, like I had this fixation that I didn't want to work a job that I hated, right? And just detest for my entire life because I saw people around me who just worked jobs that they hated, right? So that was my fear of consequence, was the whole idea that I don't want to work a job that kills my soul. So that kind of pushed me to want to figure out myself more and learn what I want to do out of life, right? So I guess it's a counter in that regard. That's the only thing I can add because you pretty much covered a lot of the fear of consequences, especially relating to work, financial, supporting a family. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me for a lot of people, I'd say.
Well, something else that I think is very worth mentioning is that if you really look at yourself, like and the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, a lot of the things that we do as humans are actually motivated by a fear of consequence. Think about it. You're at a bar or even in the workplace, anywhere, and you see a cute girl or guy, whatever it is, and you want to talk to that person, you know, and your motivation is to potentially, you know, flirt with them or whatever it is. Or even if you're a dude and you want to find another male friend and all of a sudden that voice pops in your head, it's like, don't do it, man. They're going to hate you, man. They're going to tell you to go away, man. Like, when you think about that, the worst thing that could happen is they're like, no, I'm not interested. Or, you know, maybe dramatically they tip a drink on you or something like that.
Very theatrical.
You know, if you're living in a movie, like I've never seen that before in my life. But more often than not, you won't take an action because you're so afraid of that minor consequence. But if there is a like big reward, you're going to be much more motivated to take that action over if there's a negative consequence. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's really interesting because, you know, if you like can recognize that you are not doing something out of a fear of consequence, then you can actually really question how actually bad the consequence is. And if it's just like, what's the worst that can happen? Then a person tells me to go away because they're not interested or they're in a relationship or whatever it is. Then you have to weigh that up and really think that it's like, that is going to cause me 1 second of, oh no, that person is doing, you know, they're not keen on me. Oh, I'll go and ask this other person you know, to hang out with me or whatever it is. Yeah. And it's like, so it's like you have to question what is actually, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, definitely. No. And like the point that I made before about my fear of falling into a job I hated, there is the counter of that again, which is like leading into what you were saying, where you could be fearful that you'll fail. I think a lot of the time, like you said, approaching someone in a club or at a pub, you're worried that you're going to fail, right? And it's a similar thing with a job. Like you've got this set job that is supporting your family, it's giving you just enough money to survive, even though you're not happy with the hours or whatever it may be. But then the fear is, well, if I leave this job, what happens if I fail? Or what happens if I find another job that's not as stable? So it's that whole like weighing up the pros and cons, which is like a common thing that a lot of people do, but it's really just breaking it down to that core and saying, but why am I staying in this job? And then breaking it down to, could I be happier in this other job with a little less pay, but a bit more freedom and a bit of a better like family work balance? So
it's the same with everything. And it's important. Like, we're stuck in this point for a bit, but it is really important because, it can be the difference between, I'm not happy in X situation, whatever it is, and I want to be in this situation, but I'm afraid that even I put myself out there and people say, that's a dumb thing you're doing, which is hugely, like, a lot of people are.
It's common.
I do go through that a lot of the times myself, where it's like, I'm afraid to do that thing because of what other people will say. But if you listen to some of the biggest thought leaders in the world, they say that is the furthest thing from what matters, But again, if you observe yourself, a lot of the time you're not going to do something because you're scared of something.
Yeah. But I think that's a huge point. The idea that is sometimes the worst that will happen. It's literally just, oh, sorry, I'm actually taken. I'm not interested in the example of in a club. And that's the worst that can happen. Like, unless you push it further and keep asking, like, you move on then. Like, it's...
Or someone says, you look stupid.
Yeah.
And then you say, it doesn't matter what you think because this is something that I'm trying. And, like, when did you try that thing? Have you tried that thing? Not to, get all aggressive and defensive because that's an ego mechanism.
Right.
But, just recognize if that's a factor, then you can just laugh at that and go, oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I want to try and do and I failed at it. And you know what? That's how I grow.
Yep.
So, it's about reframing that in your mind, basically. So, the next one is achievement.
Yep.
So, similarly, I mean, like, everything. You go into the gym, you want to win a bodybuilding contest, or, you're going for this next job because you want an extra $20,000 a year. But it's like, then you have to ask yourself, like, what actually is it about that achievement that you really want, that's actually motivating you? Because it's like, you want the extra $20,000 a year, but why?
Yeah.
And this is something that we're going to dive into later on in the podcast. But it's like, do you want more attention from women because you have more money? Or do you want to spend more time traveling?
Yep.
And if that's the case, then why do you want to spend more time traveling? Because you want to see more of the world, which will open up your mind, or you want to look cool on Instagram? There's just like, asking why is so powerful, especially with the achievement one, I find.
For sure, yeah, definitely. Because you can come from the wrong place there where it can guide into status more so. Like, you want the money for status, you want the car for status. But if you want this money so that you can be more financially stable for your kids, maybe, or your family, then that could be something that is motivating you. It could be like that social aspect or that family aspect, which in that turn, if that sits right with you, then that's 100% a great motivating force. But if it is purely, like you said, $20,000, you got a bonus, and then you blow that on a car because that's a status item, then it's kind of like maybe you need to question what it is exactly you're seeking. At that point, it sounds like an incentive or a reward more so than the achievement of, because achievement can mean anything to anyone, right? At the end of the day, like, you can create an achievement out of anything. It's subjective, So
I tell you that I am definitely motivated by, being able to feed my children because I have 12 of those.
Yes.
And that's definitely the hardest part. And I find this is why I'm doing the podcast, because it gets me an extra couple of million a year. And that's what keeps my children happy and healthy. And so that's what motivates me, Dan. So sarcasm if you're not from Australia.
Yes.
Because it seems a lot of people outside of Australia don't really pick up on that, and that's fine. Yeah. But communication is key in this.
Effective communication.
And often, you get a DM where it's like, man, that Eamon guy is not very cool, is he? He's a bit of a dick. Moving on.
The next one we've got is growth.
So same, in the gym. You want to grow, you want to grow bigger, and so you can achieve something. This is the thing. You could be motivated by several things at once. You might be afraid to fail, and you want to grow, but in your body physically, but in your mind as well, because you can push yourself. And you're driven by achievement because you want to win a contest. But then also, the reward of that contest is you're going to get 1,000 likes on Instagram. You know what I mean? So a lot of them could be motivating factors.
For sure, that's exactly right.
In terms of growth, I think this is probably the most genuine one, depending on, obviously, again, perspective is entirely different. But more often than not, because we're about relentless self-development, that is essentially just growth,
Yes,
and that's what we find fulfilling here, and we've chatted about that a couple of times in the podcast. But growth in pretty much any area is something that definitely is a huge motivating factor for myself, because when you look at a photo of where you were a year ago, and you look at a photo of where you're at today, whether it's physically or mentally, the different space you're in, you can see that you've grown. It gives you this sense of achievement, basically.
For sure. Yeah, and I think, like you said, that is the more genuine one out of the list, because you could grow socially, you could grow, like you said, individually as well, and then through the gym and whatever else. So I think that's a good one. It is interesting because talking about them, that was a good point you made. Like, there is a lot of overlap, and some of them you can be motivated by little factors from each, maybe. Like, there's the possibility that all 7 could motivate you at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good point. Don't think I've really got much to add to growth.
No.
But the transition into power, I think, is an interesting one because power, power and achievement, that's kind of what we were talking about, like that status symbol. So, like, if you, sorry, just lost my breath there. If you
passing out of the podcast,
sorry about that, too excited, guys.
Power.
Wait, there was the power. Yeah, it got me. So yeah, like the power. Like, so for example, with that $20,000 raise that you were talking about, maybe that could be accompanied by a slight role increase up the hierarchy. Maybe you then go to supervisor. So that could be accompanied with a sense of power, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the thing that's motivating you to get to that point. Obviously, the money is a nice reward incentive, but there could be the power value as well that's coming in. And power to me has a little bit of like a negative connotation, but I think you can be positive in your power. Like, if you're a leader, you can be a positive leader, right? You can be a leader that creates massive change and social change that can be positive for millions of people, right? So there's a weight to it, right? Where you're kind of like, you could potentially be torn to the dark side, quotation marks, of power and having this like grandiose sense of self or a narcissistic sense of you being better than others, or you could just recognize that you have this additional power and that you could affect and change people below you in a positive way, right? You could make their work environment better because you know what it was like coming from that point up to a supervisor position. So maybe you have that power, so you want to change in a positive regard. But then obviously there's the negative as well.
I think an appropriate word is dangerous.
Yes.
This one, power, is dangerous, because obviously, if you are driven by power so you can get rich and call poor people poor, whatever it is, then that's, chances are you're not going to be wanting to be self-aware about this fact but yeah, humans do have this in their nature in that they do want to, there is a social hierarchy, which is the next one. But you definitely want to, some people are happy to be submissive and be on the lower end of the social hierarchy or whatever, but others are driven to be on the higher end of the social hierarchy, whether your motivations are good or evil. And again, there's a couple of different motivations there.
Yep.
But it's like, if your motivation is for power and it is for good, then even so, if you're not in the power position that you want to be yet, when you get there, motivations can change. You get that level of power, that status of power, and it's funny, I've had this in my life as well, where you get to a particular status, which might not be above hardly anyone else, but it's just above average in whatever field it is. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get to tell this person what to do. And yeah, this is cool, rather than beforehand, you're like, you know what? Yes, I'm going to be a leader, and then I'm going to motivate people to do better, and everything's going to be great. I'm going to be positive, and I'm not going to be like the people that are above me now that treat me poorly or whatever circumstance it is. And then you get to that point, and before you even know it, you're suddenly treating other people in the exact same way because you have the power.
Yep.
So another example of a couple of different things and categories that can motivate you. And power is a dangerous one.
It is a dangerous one. And I think it definitely leans heavily on ego as well, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Exactly.
And that's what I was saying before, that grandiose sense of self, which basically means you think you're better than others. Like you're narcissistic in that regard. You are the pinnacle. So it could happen, like you said, it could be the organization maybe encourages that, maybe everyone around you like manipulates you, but if you're going in with pure intentions to help the people below you, it can be amazing. So like you said, it's a dangerous one. It's something to really be mindful of, especially in different roles, right? Because different roles you could have more power, whether that's the police force or the military or government even. Like you have an additional power to that. So
which, as we can see in all governmental structures, gets abused.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Like, again, this is just human nature, and this is why it's the most dangerous one, because examples of it are literally everywhere, and it does not stop. That as soon as people get into power, no matter what their motivations are, it gets real dark real quick, Dan.
Yep.
So yeah, got to be aware of your own ego.
For sure. The next one we've got is social factors. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but definitely one of the, again, probably one of the bigger ones as well. Like social factors, I feel, social norms and social conventions, which we've covered in other previous podcasts, but that is so powerful because a populace of people, millions of people could believe the same thing, and that like force or that driving factor that is coming in from other sources could be a very easily motivated aspect in your life. Like if you see others doing it, you see it as the norm, that's like a social factor that's influencing you to do a certain thing, right? And that could be, again, in the workplace or with friends or even family in that regard. But yeah, I guess that it can be, again, positive. Like it's the same with all of them, really, I feel.
Yeah.
They can all be positive and negative. It just depends. That's kind of what we're trying to get
both,
at.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing is like, I think no matter what you're motivated by, part of it has a social element to it. You know what I mean? Because
that's it. We live in a social world. Yeah,
that's it. And we do have a deep need to fit into a social like hierarchy and circle and feel like we belong, basically. And when you do feel that way, it's obviously fantastic and fulfilling. And then when you don't feel that way, people can act very irrational very quickly. And so, when you're in that outside world, and this is why connection is very important, which again, we've chatted about, when you're outside of that thing, that's when you see people turn into terrorists and whatnot, because they are, outside of the social thing. So they're motivated by social life, but in a negative way to make an impact, to say, hey, you didn't recognize me and you didn't see that I felt significant, or you're suppressing me. So I felt I was on the outside. So I need to do this drastic thing to be recognized or to make an impact, basically. But yeah, then you can also be on the other side of it, where you just have a need to feel accepted and have a good social circle, basically. But I think, this definitely crosses over into all of them.
It does, yeah. And from what the research said as well, it's that whole idea of feeling like you're part of a tribe and feeling like you're part of a community, which
you are. Metaminds. Welcome.
Metaminds.
Hello.
Yeah.
You're a metamind.
Welcome to Metaminds.
You know this already, then.
Yeah.
So the final one, which Dan added on, is impact.
Yeah.
Which, again, positive and negative, and it comes along with power. And if you want to make an impact, which we generally do, first of all, expressing ourselves, but then also potentially trying to help anyone else that has gone through any situation, or, we could have experienced something that is potentially have more life experience than another person, and we want to make an impact on them positively. But then there's people like Donald Trump, who, what impact does he want to make? Just wants to have a huge ego. Well, that's what it seems,
It seems that way.
And most people in huge positions of power want to make impacts that are not very positive, it seems. Or they don't necessarily want to, but...
Yeah, there could be other factors from their board or their team, but in Donald Trump's example, it seems like a very narcissistic, individual-driven impact, right? But I don't know. That's a whole thing. Again, it's a whole other podcast, really. Politics. But yeah, impact for me is the idea through the counseling world of trying to impact people in a positive way and do a selfless act that will in turn help someone's life. But the flip of that is that also there is I guess a selfish element of that, where I also want to learn and I also want to feel this, because it is the most amazing feeling when you help someone, in my opinion, from my experiences. So that is something that I'm trying to seek, that idea of helping people, but also helping myself and learning and growing within myself as well. So that's, I guess, one of the factors for me. Impact is
Look
a
at
big
me,
thing.
I'm Dan. I want to make a positive impact. Why do you want to make a positive impact? Is it because you want to feel recognized, or you want to, look good? I don't know. Have you explored the...
I have, yeah. I think there's a lot of factors for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's firstly the idea that I've recognized that, I didn't have many people as I was moving around growing up who could impact me in a positive way, because I was struggling through school and, I had my mum and a few friends at the time. But when I finally recognized the impact that a positive person had on me and a role model had on me, I recognized that, this is something that I would love to do. I've gone through some struggles and I would love to be able to help people come out of that dark side and hopefully find some meaning and something out of life. So there is that side of it, but there's also, like I mentioned before, the fact that it's driving me to grow myself and learn from other people. And it's just, it's a challenging thing as well. So there's lots of factors, I guess.
Yeah, so I suppose the main point of this podcast is that we're talking about, it's very important to, there's so many factors that you can be motivated by, and just taking a second to really do this exercise in any aspect of your life. What is it that's actually motivating you? And then ask yourself why. And then when you get that answer, ask yourself why. Yeah. And then when you get that answer, ask yourself why, because often you'll get deeper and deeper and deeper and realize, oh my gosh, I'm doing this because of this, which is on the opposite end of why I actually thought I was doing this. But for that, you have to seek the truth. which interestingly enough is our next episode. But yeah, you have to have this self-awareness, I suppose, which is important, which is what really we're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. So did we want to give an example of what that looked like?
Yeah, so what motivates you, Dan?
In what aspect?
Oh, good question. Yeah, is there can you do it in just all of life? Like,
yeah,
generally what motivates you, or?
Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah. So I'm just looking at the notes, everyone who's listening, but I think rewards and incentives, even though that's not the main reason why I'm getting into counseling, but it is quite a well-paid job. So of course there's an aspect of that where I'm going, well, this is good. This could make me financially viable so that I can have other passions outside of counseling and still pursue video and still pursue a podcast and all these things. So there is an aspect of that where the incentive is a bit more of freedom of time. If I only work 4 or 3 days, then I have more time for my other projects, plus the reward of money. So that's one of the factors. But that was a counseling example, I guess. But as a whole, like, rewards definitely, push me a little bit more. The idea of like making money through YouTube or, doing little projects that can make money. Of course, that's like a part of my mind because that's how my business mind kind of works here and there. But then the idea of achievement is another thing that stands out to me.
Yeah, so I think what I point out here is that you're talking about the types of things that motivate you.
Yeah.
I want to know what it is that actually motivates you. Obviously, It's going to fall into other categories.
Yeah.
Can you give like a general statement, what motivates you in your life? We've only got a couple of minutes left.
Okay, I think just growth, just personal growth.
Yeah.
I think that's what motivates me.
Fair enough. And so
always learning.
Why is that?
Because I think that knowledge is important, like the idea that I can learn always, that's a powerful concept to me.
And why is learning always a powerful concept to you?
Because I guess I didn't go through school and enjoy it. I don't feel like I gained as much as I needed to out of school because I feel like I am like academically inclined where I like to learn. So that didn't help me, but now that I'm out, I'm learning through audiobooks and going to university, and that really sits right with me, I think.
Knowledge that you can choose.
Yes, knowledge that I can choose, yeah.
Rather than knowledge that's kind of forced onto you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and look, we could just keep asking why.
But that's it, and that's the idea that you can do it on your own, or you can do it with a friend or family member. Kind
of example that I was digging for myself very quickly is like, a general statement that someone could say is like, what motivates you? It's like, well, I want to have a good life. And so what does that entail? Well, I want to feel happy a lot of the time. I want to have good friendships, good relationships, have enough money, go on a few holidays or whatever.
Yeah.
But then, you can ask why.
Why? Yeah.
Because that's what's going to make me feel happy. And a lot of times it comes down to the feeling that you're going to get. Ask yourself what emotionally motivates you, which is something we didn't touch on,
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why? Because you don't want to feel bad, because then you'll, not feel great, and you're not going to have good social connections. But why? And these are social conventions as well.
Yeah.
Because you could challenge it. You could say, actually, I really want to live my life on my own. I'm going to get some money, build a tiny house, live by myself. But the social convention is, and obviously as humans we're driven to be more social, but that is the social convention, and you actually could be, you could thrive more when you are by yourself, We're getting meta here again.
Yeah,
but you can just ask why so often.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be general, but for example, in your job, why are you doing that job?
Yeah.
And ask yourself a few times.
That's exactly right. Yep. Same with the gym, same with your diet, everything.
But that's pretty much
it.
Everything we wanted to chat about. It's like this exercise is important, and it's something that I find myself doing, not as often as I should be, but definitely more often than potentially other people do. And it's very powerful.
It is.
It can show you a lot about yourself, So anything else to add?
I think that's it.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. For those on iPhones, if you could please take a couple of seconds to leave us a rating and review on iTunes, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
Take a screenshot, send us a DM, and I don't know, we'll send you a personal video message saying how much we love you, basically. But it really does help out the podcast in the rankings. So thanks for joining us on this week of MetaMinds, and we will see you next week.
Next one. Yeah. Stay meta.
Thanks, guys.